Welcome to Just One Thing, the real estate podcast where we cut the noise and get to the good stuff. I'm your host, Chaya Klein with One Real Estate. Each episode, I sit down with a guest who knows their field inside and out to talk about things most people wish they understood before diving into real estate or business decisions. Whether you're buying, selling, leasing, renovating, or just trying to figure it all out, this show is here to give you the clarity, insight, and confidence you need to take the next step. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Just One Thing. Today's guest is someone who redefined the office industry in Lakewood. Before, Lakewood was known for Class A offices, polished, beautiful lobbies. Shaindy Shur saw what was possible. She's a true visionary, someone who took the leap where most people hesitate and built ahead of the curve in an industry where women are few and far between. That's one of the reasons I'm especially excited about this conversation. It's always inspiring to connect with other women in real estate where we're in the space, and I have tremendous respect for the way Shaindy has led with courage, foresight, and results. She's the developer behind some of Lakewood's most iconic projects, like 36 Airport Road, 1700 Avenue of the States, and 1776 Avenue of the States, better known as Liberty Plaza. Each of these buildings didn't just appear. They took hard work and lots of vision to get it done. Shaindy, I am so excited to have you here. I cannot wait for you to share with us a little bit of your journey, how you got here, what the vision was like before Class A was actually a thing.
Thank you, Chaya, for having me on. It's really an honor and a pleasure. Always a pleasure to see you, but it's an honor to be on your podcast. And hopefully I could share some of my journey and inspire some of the people out there who might want to join this amazing industry, the real estate world.
We're so excited to hear where you started, how you got into this. So your journey really began in healthcare. Could you back us up a little bit? Did you fall into real estate? Did you fall on your head one day and say, I'm going to be in real estate?
Yeah. So really, it's quite funny because I really did fall into everything. Hashem really led me along my path and the journey from the very beginning. So really just, my background had always been just coming literally straight out of school. I took a job in a nursing home, not going to date myself, but
a couple of years ago. And I worked my way up until I eventually started a small office in my house, my dining room. And then I took over my basement, and I had a couple of employees. And then I leased my first office space in Lakewood. And I was a small business, and it was a big check. What was the experience like? I'm just curious. All those years back, without dating yourself.
There was no Chaya Klein around. There was no broker. It's actually quite a funny story. I wanted an office near my house. And I saw them clearing ground on River Avenue, right where First Commerce Bank is now on 105 River Avenue. I had just moved to Lakewood. I really didn't know the people around, but I saw a sign and it said, coming here, First Commerce Bank, and it had Abe Penzer's name on it. And I called the number. I said, hi, it looks like you have a building going up and I need space. It's near my house. He's like, you have to call the owner. His name is Rabbi Ziv Rothschild. I'm like, okay, I'll call him. And that's how I got to know Ziv. Alav Shalom, an amazing person. And I took a space over there and we negotiated. There was no broker. There was no lawyers. We just wrote down a couple of things and I took my first space. So besides the legalities of it, it was a big check.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, what's that happening, for him? What does that do for him, this big check? And I didn't really know how commercial real estate worked, but I did own a house. So I thought it was the similar way, I'll rent and I'll be paying for his mortgage. And in a couple of years, he'll have, a building mortgage free.
Right.
Why can't I just do that for myself and then just pay my own mortgage and just use my own rent, my own business to pay rent and to pay down my own debt? So that's what got me, started thinking about it. And then there was a property that was available on Airport Road. And we built first a small building there where I had my company there. And first of all, it was ground up and I found I really enjoyed it, just watching, literally from paper come to life. At first it was intimidating, but when I first met Ziv and then we bought the piece of property from Mr. Menashe Frankel, they had so many contacts, people who can help. Engineers, architect, all this was new to me, but hiring the best team around you is the key. just having, the right people who could tell you this is what's needed. I didn't know the first thing about a permit and approval, but I hired the people that did. And Lakewood's booming. Lakewood has always been booming. And there's great vendors who know this stuff well. And I went along for the ride with them. And that was the first project. And that morphed into,
Can we talk about the first project a little bit? So you found this piece of property. You decided to take the plunge. Scary or not?
So I do give a tremendous credit to Mr. Frankel. He was amazing. We did the first property that was contingent on approvals.
Oh, wow.
So that really took a lot of risk because do I know if you buy a piece of property, if there's, oil tank underneath it and I'll put money in and it'll be, terrible. So, what I have learned between the first project and future projects is that they really are creative ways to work through risk factors. Sellers, lawyers, they could come up with creative ways. I'm by nature not a risky person, which is why really my healthcare business, really fed into the real estate. I didn't have a dream that one day I'm going to buy a piece of property, build it all on spec, having no tenants and filling up 100,000 square feet. That would have been too daunting for me. And I know there's some people that would do it.
Right.
I'm very risk adverse. It made sense. The sale made sense. It was based on, contingent on approvals. There was really a lot of things that made me feel comfortable that it wasn't crazy at risk. I was going to be my own first anchor tenant. The banks in Lakewood were amazing. If it was that first SBA loan, the 90% funding, there was really good metrics and excellent, financing and vendors that helped mitigate the risk. And to me, that was key.
What was something that was unexpected in that first transaction? Because I'm sure every deal has their unexpected challenges that come up, and you're very good at dealing with the challenges and getting through them.
Right. Well, construction as a whole has a lot of challenges that come up. That's development. But as a whole in real estate, what really struck me as very interesting is that we went to the SBA for our first loan, and they offered us 90%. And when I went in to speak to First Commerce Bank, because they were my neighbors over there, they're like, we'll just match it. We'll figure out how to give you 100% funding.
Wow.
And I don't remember the exact details. This is really going back a long way. But really having good relationships and having those that trust you came a tremendous way. I'm a very transparent person. I had my business plan. I told them exactly what I know, what I don't know, who I'm hiring. And I was completely open with who I am, what I plan to do, what I'm comfortable with, what are my risks. And once they had a relationship, they were really willing to work with us. And we didn't end up using the SBA loan. And First Commerce really they matched it. They did better than matching it. That was just amazing. That came so out of the blue. And it was the start of a very long relationship. Currently now they're actually our biggest tenant in my new building. So right. It's a relationship that has gone very far, and it's a relationship built on trust. And it really played out in so many amazing ways.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so once you established that you were able to do this on Airport Road, so walk us through a little bit. The next projects were on Avenue of the States. That was a totally new concept when you came in. Boulevard of the Americas, Avenue of the States, wasn't really corporate park yet.
Correct. Right. The only building that was going up then there was one, I think LTC, either was under construction or starting construction. Our next step really was also, again, fueled by a business. I had started about 3 years before a secondary business that was growing very fast, and I needed another place for that business. So similar to this, I had an anchor tenant to start. Again, I'm not, I wasn't comfortable with just straight up risk. So I had an anchor tenant, but this risk was a little more than the first one. The first one we were, 100% owner occupied. This one was a third of the building. So it was definitely a little bit more risk, but I had the leverage. And at that point, things were growing that I was able to feel comfortable with that risk. But again, Corporate Park, Cedar Bridge, they were amazing to work with. It was contingent on approvals. It wasn't just, buying a piece of property. So once we sat and met, the Cedar Bridge, the campus, the team, they were great to work with. They heard us out. They were happy to get the park moving. So we were, I think, the second purchase in the Cedar Bridge Park. And pretty quickly on, once we saw that moving, we took the next lot over. So it was relationship with them. They saw we were people who are able to, execute, say that we're going to do it and do it. But they worked with us on the risk factors, and that was huge. That was huge for me. As I say, I'm not this major risk person. So, working with them was great, and that got us started further. And then that led to the next one. It was just each project was the neighbor of the next project.
Right. Did you ever envision that Corporate Park is going to look like this? I mean, when you took that first property, when you bought the first one.
When I bought the
1700.
first one, I think that those that run the Cedar Bridge Corporate Park did have this vision. They were visionaries. Going back 20 years before I bought it, they developed the site work over here when the township gave them the land. And I think that they did have a vision. They're real visionaries. And they shared the vision with us. And I felt it in my bones it was going to be this way. I mean, Lakewood was growing on the residential side. And it goes together. Once these residential, people are opening up businesses. You know, of course, no one knew for sure, but once it built one after another, this was clearly their vision, you know, going back to year 2000 when they got the land. So they were real visionaries, and I was really happy and proud to be part of their team, you know, part of their relationships to execute it. And it's an amazing park.
Did you face any opposition? Was there skepticism from other people? Because like I said, you were a visionary to buy the second piece of property here. Corporate Park didn't exist. The towers weren't up yet. The lights, the lobbies, this wasn't a thing. I know going back a couple of years ago, one of the first buildings that we actually listed and leased out was 101 Chase. And I remember the pricing at that point was $23 a foot gross. That means all in. That was your total number. And I can't tell you how many conversations I had with people and how many phone calls I had from people that told me, are you crazy? It's so expensive. You are never going to fill up. And now we are almost double.
So really, the only skepticism I had really is in our last building, which was full spec. I had no anchor tenant. It was right after COVID where the construction started picking up. Prices spiked literally 20, 30%, and we really needed higher leases over there. Our first 3 buildings were really full before a rock was put in the ground. Like we were literally almost full before the building was up. Lakewood had no buildings. There was no class. There was no class office. Like there was nothing. So it was taken in a minute.
People, I think, really worked out of their home. A lot. Where did people work?
A lot of Class B.
Industrial Park.
A lot of Class B office space. I mean, our first was Class B office space,
right.
and you just throw in cubicles and that's fine. So there really was no Class A, and there was no brokers. I mean, the first time, I had to go to you. I'm like, really, I have to pay you for this? Why should I have to pay you for this? People are knocking on my door, you know, with my other buildings.
Until they're not.
And once our buildings were successful, the very first 2 or 3, you see how many are going up, and the market needs Chaya Klein for sure.
I'll second the motion.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. You know, a lease was very easy for us to do at that time. When you have 3 or 4 people knocking on your door, it is what it is. Here's the price, take it or leave it. At this point, once there's so many factors into it, and I saw that it was taking me a tremendous amount of time to try to get even one lease done, I'm like, I can't do this. I'm trying to develop. I'm trying to meet the designer and 1,000 other things that need to be done. I need Chaya Klein, clearly.
Let's talk about the development side a little bit. So as a developer, walk us through the process a little bit more. Like I know we discussed, you know, you had your tenants, so you felt a little bit more comfortable. You were able to take the plunge. It wasn't so scary. But Liberty Plaza, there were no tenants, like you said. So you get this piece of property, and now where do you go from there?
So my first projects I learned a lot on, and I think I made some, mistakes.
That's the only way you can learn.
Yes. Yeah. And, some mistakes are actually in stone and bricks, and they can't necessarily be changed. It's
Can
a bathroom.
you share any of those mistakes with us?
Even starting from my first rental space on 105 River Avenue, since I had come in before the construction was done, Mr. Rothschild said, okay, where do you want your space? How much space? And we literally wrote it down on a piece of paper. The rest of the building was just the bathrooms in the hallway, which ended up being with the windows.
Right. So, that space is still like that today, by the way.
Still today.
The windows are in the bathroom, and the
Exactly.
space does not have windows. That is true.
So some mistakes happen like that. In another building, it was very hard that one tenant took a bigger space, and it was there was no front door access, so it was very hard to split the space. So making a building with the future in mind, with good hallways, that each tenant space could be expanded, or if they leave, could be divided into 2. There's certain things I really learned just from tenants coming, going, what could be done just to be able to work with the times.
What you're saying is so true, because so often I have tenants who say, but if they make the fit out exactly like this, it's so beautiful, it's so perfect. And I always try to tell them, it's so beautiful, it's so perfect for you.
Correct.
But it's not a benefit for the landlord, because the next tenant does not necessarily think it's so beautiful or perfect for them. and then they'll have to take it out and start again. So it's really important to stay mindful and to really try to build something that's not so super specific.
Correct.
That if they do leave, it's easy to just replace them with somebody who is just looking for space.
Correct. I actually have right now a tenant coming into one of the spaces and they want to take 2 of the interior walls down. And this is something I didn't think about, but it's a real learning experience. The lights were installed the opposite way. They're 2x4s and one go perpendicular, one goes horizontal. When you take the walls down, they have to all be rewired. So it's not a crazy thing, but these are things
Small
that you could,
things to stay
small
mindful.
things. And we have a lot of professionals in the buildings doing these plans, but they're not necessarily looking at it from the developer's point of how to run this business long-term, efficiently, tenants coming and going. They get a job to do, put the lights in here, they just put it in, which is, their trade is great, but you really need someone at the top looking at every single aspect of it, making sure that it works long-term for your building.
Right.
You know, Amir Hashem, hopefully these tenants will be here forever, but life doesn't work that way. People grow, people downsize, people upsize, people sell, people move on, and your building needs to be able to handle that without it costing a ton of money for tenants to come and go. And I hope to own these buildings for many years.
Right. Okay. So now let's just address something. Like I started, you are one of the few and far between women in this space. Has that affected any part of the development for you in terms of the lending, the leasing, the building? Do you sometimes feel outnumbered?
I really don't. My experience has always been tremendous respect from everyone all around. From the very beginning, you start with engineering, architect, designer, the bankers. First of all these great businesses have women behind them.
That is true.
All of them. You go into their offices, they're outnumbered. You know, maybe the owners of the businesses are not, but I've only had tremendous respect. The only time that it's a drop, may be uncomfortable, is when when construction starts in the very beginning and I have to put that hard hat in when I'm walking through the building and I get some funny looks. But before that, it's mostly working on paper in offices. Right. After that, walking through the building, there's so many trades that come walking through, and women or men. It hasn't affected me at all. I've really only had respectful interactions. And intuition wise, I think, the women's intuition helps a lot.
Yes.
Design, cleaning, the smaller things, I think it brings a value to the table, to the team.
Yeah. Thinking through the process from a woman's perspective.
Right. Yes. Every owner, every tenant, every vendor has their own, their own personality, their own gender, the own thing that they look at things with. And I think really the key is just having a great team with everyone with their own benefits that they bring to the table.
Is there one specific win or defining moment that, as you're going through this process, and it's a long process, many years that you're doing this, that you can share with us?
It's really been a journey of one step at a time, but I do look at, every tenant and every relationship as a win, every single one, because the small tenant who takes 1,000 square feet tomorrow needs 2,500 square feet. The small tenant who outgrows a space, and even if we don't have a place to put him anywhere else, but had a great experience and I was able to host him and they're happy. It's just a great experience. Where they go after that, who knows? But every win's a win that just builds one upon the next. Obviously, some of our biggest leases are a huge win. And like I mentioned, the relationship with First Commerce Bank and them taking out a whole floor and the building name is a huge win. But even the small tenants are a huge win, and making them happy and knowing that they could run their businesses. I always say the best thing that I could do for every single one of my tenants is actually to use their services. So when I agree
with you on that, by the way. And we try to implement that as well.
So I just bought a house and I used my tenant who's a title, and I used, I have a dentist on the first floor. I was actually he's a pediatric dentist. And when he opened, I was the first one to knock on the door and say, will you see my kids? And I use him, and I use all my tenants for their services as much as possible. And I hope that by hosting, them, their businesses will grow and they'll be matzliach, and good, successful businesses just help each other all around.
Yeah, absolutely. So what does the future look like for you? Is there more development coming?
I don't know. Keep tuned. I think Lakewood might have outgrown it, but there's so much going on in Jackson and Manchester. And I think that our community is growing by leaps and bounds. And really on the residential side, if you see the residential growth and construction,
We can't keep up.
Yeah, the commercial side comes right after.
Yeah.
So if you have 100 families moving in from Williamsburg, you're gonna have 10 new businesses. It might be made up by me, but it's the way I feel. It's a number that's not in science, but I think 10% of every 10% of those that move into the community or grow up, get married, and have families to support, start their own businesses. And even if they don't start their own business, they need jobs. So the current jobs are growing, and especially now that you could manage everything remotely. I mean, even someone said to me, "How come all the nursing home owners all live in one place, the Northeast?" Because nowadays you can own a nursing home in California and live in Lakewood.
Right.
So it didn't used to always be that way, but with technology, you could literally live in Lakewood and just grow your businesses. If it's title, if it's real estate, if it's multifamily, if it's nursing homes, you don't have to be in Kansas. I mean, look at the ABA business.
Right.
Someone just started an ABA business and moved into our building. So I said to them, "What did you do? You just took a map and just put a dart somewhere and said, 'Let me start ABA in North Carolina'?" I don't know what the answer was. It was a joke, but it could be. We're just opening up ABAs anywhere in the United States, and we live here in Lakewood. So I think there's tremendous growth in our community, and working at home doesn't work. And really, office buildings out there is downgraded for lending. A lot of lenders won't lend to office buildings, but in the way we have families, Baruch Hashem, you can't work at home. I don't know, women and men, it's just really, really difficult to work at home. You have
and
kids.
to get work done. Yeah.
And to get work done and be focused and concentrated. So the work from at home softened the market outside of Lakewood very much. There's vacancies all over the United States. There's commercial buildings that are being turned over to multifamily apartments, condos. But in Lakewood, I don't think we're going to see that.
So I just want to go back to one thing that you said. You said that maybe Lakewood is like a little bit tapped out. What would you say to somebody who's looking to get into development? Do you think that Lakewood is not the place they should branch out? Do you think that there's still opportunity? What should they look out for if it is a good opportunity?
My hatzlacha has always been coming into the market before it was a thing. If you come into a market when it's already a thing, you're obviously paying premium pricing.
It's hard to find that not thing.
I'm not a maven at that. Like I said, I fell into this, but we did look before it was a thing. And some of my future thoughts on developing is looking where the emerging communities are. And communities are going to emerge where their schools are. I have a relative that lives deep in Jackson, and they live in Lakewood a whole day because the kids are still in school here. He has a job and she has a job, so they'll just work here. But the second their kids are in Jackson and there's no need to travel into Lakewood, their life will be in Jackson and they won't come anywhere near Lakewood. It's
That's right. It could be 35
Flatbush
minutes
doesn't
out.
go to Midwood. You don't necessarily go from Flatbush to Brooklyn every day. It's literally a separate community. So the emerging communities are those that are going to have schools where people don't need to come into Lakewood. And, obviously Jackson is huge with that. The schools are already there. They already have approvals, but the schools will eventually have to come to Toms River and Manchester. And people are not going to want to travel into Lakewood for a job. So if you look around, the shopping centers booming, there's mixed uses coming around, there's warehousing. Amazon is a little bit, tough, I hear, as an industry now, but it's going to all come back. I mean, 2026, we are addicted to our shopping. I mean, we're addicted to using things for 6 months and throwing out. Not me personally. I don't know. Our community, our society, our generation. Amazon is not going anywhere. So, if it's warehousing, if it's commercial, if it's shopping, residential, the community, the tri-state, which is Toms River, Jackson, and Lakewood, Manchester, it should be four really.
We call it 5 towns.
The 5 towns. What's the fifth?
Howell.
Howell. So
booming.
This is the 5 towns. There's nothing that's not going to be successful if you buy it at the right price. Obviously, you have to underwrite it. You need to know what the right price is. And if you need to hire professionals to underwrite, there are people out there that could do it for you and create projections and what it will look like. But, it's a booming community.
So the biggest thing that I took away from today is that relationships are key. Having the right people around you are key. And hiring the right people are also key.
100%.
So what's one thing that you want to leave our listeners with? A lesson that they can take away, a tip?
So I'll go right back to what you said, because that's really the key, not to publish publicly, but I didn't make it through high school. I left after...
This is being published publicly.
Well, point is,
I think that's actually very inspirational. I wish I would have known that. I would have led with that, because there are a lot of people who struggle through school, struggle through life. And then it's always amazing for us to hear somebody who didn't do well in the beginning, and then they found their niche and they really were able to, I mean, like I said, you are few and far between. Women don't go into commercial real estate very often. And some of them that do are not necessarily very successful. So it really is an inspiration for us.
I think actually, specifically because I didn't go through schooling, might have taken me where I am now. If you go through schooling and you have a specific route of what you want to do and what you want to get paid, you're a little bit limited. I went in and I go into a project knowing, look, I don't want to pay rent for someone else's mortgage. I had no idea what that meant. How, what, when, where. But I spoke to people and I was, listen, afterwards when I told that story about Rabbi Rothschild, people were like, what, you called him? I'm like, yeah, I called him on his cell phone. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah.
I didn't know.
I didn't realize what a
right?
famous person he was, but he was so nice. He was so nice. He invited me to come down to his house. He I don't know if you recall, he had a little office in his house. That was just, he was running the co-op. It was before Pesach. He was ordering they have their own matzah run and their own grape juice wine, run. And he was really nice. I think people are very, very nice out there. They're eager to help. They're eager to share. And I knew nothing. And the more you know nothing, the more you can ask questions. And if I take myself back down to there, in my mindset now, I obviously know so much more, but you got to look at it and know there are people out there that really know. And if you have to hire an engineer, don't be afraid to sound stupid. They start rambling off this approval, that approval, the state, the county, the this, the that. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Do you mind giving me an extra half hour and explain it? The multiple layers of approvals. I knew zilch,
Amazing.
but they were people, and obviously you pay them for their time, and they could walk you through it. And you say, you know what? I don't think I could do this myself. Can I hire you to do it for me? Sure. Like the answer, sure, is this is what people do, and they're really experienced people and good people that can help you. But you have to know what to ask, and don't be afraid to sound foolish.
I think that's actually even better than maybe associating yourself with all the right people. That comes first. Being able to be humble enough, no ego, that you can ask the questions that may be the right questions to lead you onto big things.
Yeah, I remember when I didn't know what DSCR was. I had no idea what a debt service ratio was. Like real, literally. And nowadays with Google, the best.
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT is even better. You go on, you put your question out there, you ask them even what the formula is. They'll tell you exactly which numbers. You open up your spreadsheet, you work it out, and they literally can walk you through it. So, there are a lot of things we don't know, but nowadays there's so much out there that can help anyone if you want to grow, learn, really understand it, and then take there's always a leap of faith, but you don't have to be the riskiest person to take the riskiest leap. You could try to work within your own risk tolerance level.
Yeah, I think that's very important to know. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been very insightful and really very inspirational. And I think that our listeners are really going to walk away with a lot of good information. And you never know, you may have just planted the seed in somebody's mind and they're running out for the next thing.
Okay. Well, we're looking forward. Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure to see you and spend some time with you.
That's it for today's episode of Just One Thing. If you've learned something new, feel a little more informed, or know someone who definitely needs to hear this, pass it on. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. We've got more great conversations coming your way. One topic, one expert, one thing at a time. Until then, keep learning, keep asking questions, and remember, it only takes one thing.